how you doing? We're live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here at 5th and State, and we're talking about redeveloping the city and moving forward here. Aaron Snippert is the executive director for RedevelopErie, the City of Erie Redevelopment Authority. Aaron, welcome back. Appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be back.
And Merry Christmas. I mean,
yeah, it's coming up quick.
Well, and I was asking you off the air, like, does the Redevelopment Authority own properties themselves, or not necessarily?
We do own properties.
So you have to maintain them in a storm like we just had.
Yes. Yeah.
What does that look like?
It's a daunting task, and we try to prioritize the high profile areas and sidewalks, which are highly traveled. But right now, sidewalks are just a disaster everywhere. So it's.
I mean, do you have to maintain some kind of fleet of vehicles or snow blowers, or how do you?
We subcontract to vendors. Yeah, our lawn care and our snow removal is all subcontracted out.
Are you a fan of SB Mowing, by the way? Have you seen that YouTube channel?
No.
Okay, so this is...
is that the guy that goes around and cleans up vacant properties? I've seen some of his videos. Yeah, I've watched. I've gotten
it's pretty. It's pretty satisfying when he takes like an overgrown property and turns it around, or helps out a family that maybe is indigent, or just doesn't have the physical capacity to keep their lawn up.
We could give them something to mow. That's for sure.
Is that right? Yeah. It's amazing, and it all goes back to I've had this multiple conversations with the mayor about there's blight. There's not on every block, but in every neighborhood in the city of Erie.
Absolutely,
it doesn't matter if you live in Frontier, Glenwood, or Lower East Side, Lower West Side.
No,
right?
Absolutely not. I mean, we have a property up off of Peach Street. South of 38th Street. We tore one down last year over in Frontier on West 6th Street.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're everywhere. It's just a matter of the life circumstances of the property owner and where it falls. And a lot of times we don't find them until it's 5, 6, 7 years after somebody's walked away from it, because especially in a neighborhood that's well taken care of, they don't show up very quick.
Talk about the timeline of how this works, how something could become blighted. You mentioned that maybe somebody, a life circumstance, somebody passes away, or, a spouse passes away, and the remaining person can't keep it up. Can you share a little bit about how that usually goes? I guess?
Right. So it all starts with code enforcement, and really, since code enforcement in the city of Erie works off of a reactive basis, so they work off of calls from individuals about a property, and so like I said, a lot of times it takes several years until the property gets to a state where somebody starts calling on it. Sometimes there are proactive neighbors who will call relatively quick, but a lot of times that's not the case. And so it starts with them calling and filing a complaint, code enforcement getting out there, and they start to file notices, and then goes to a citation when they're non-responsive. And at that point, typically, how the system works in the city of Erie, the code enforcement officer refers it to the demolition coordinator, who is the code enforcement officer who handles blighted properties. And
where does your authority enter into any? Are you in on that yet?
Right at the end, when it goes to the demolition coordinator, is where we come in. So the redevelopment authorities in the state of Pennsylvania were created under the urban redevelopment law, which allows for the creation of a redevelopment authority. It also details the blighted property review committee, which the city enacted.
Okay.
It's a 9-member committee made up of 4 citizens, 1 city council liaison who is a voting member, 2 appointees by the mayor, a member of the planning commission, and the executive director of the redevelopment authority. So
you're on those.
I'm on that committee, and so code enforcement presents a property that meets the criteria. And so in the urban redevelopment law, it details out 9 items in which, and it only had one of those 9 items has to be applicable to the property for the committee to designate it blighted. And so those properties are presented to the committee. It's their job to confirm that property does meet one of those criteria. The committee declares the property blighted, and then it falls into the redevelopment authority's hands to not take ownership of it, but steward the property, send out a blighted property notice, post the property with a notice of blight, and inform the property owner by a means of service that the property has been declared blighted, and provide them a period of time, and our period of time is 30 days to remedy the issues identified by code enforcement. So
Wow.
it's really we kind of, and we've presented on it. It's the last line of code enforcement.
Sure.
When all of code enforcement's other efforts for a vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated property have failed, BPRC comes in, declares it blighted, and then the authority can step in at that point and try to make final connection with that property owner to get the issues resolved.
Can you give us a flavor of what the 9 big bullet points are for blight?
Tax delinquency is a big one.
Oh, sure.
A structure that has been damaged by fire is another one. A property whose condition is detrimental to the surrounding properties.
Now, what would that be?
Where it's
if you have
subject to
4-foot high
structural-
grass? Or?
No, more structural collapse.
Oh,
A property
okay, so it could fall in on somebody else.
Yeah, where a property has decayed to the point where there's the potential for damage to a neighboring property via, either a porch falling over. A lot of times we see chimneys fall over onto a neighboring property, and those type issues. So, but yeah, those are the primary ones. Typically, it's tax delinquency, no occupancy, failure to respond to code enforcement over a period of 6 months are the big ones that we check pretty much on every property.
Given where we're at right now as a community, one of the kind of the blowbacks I'm hearing here at these microphones are that code enforcement is behind. We've got a big punch list when it comes to that. How does that impact your role when code enforcement's behind?
Right. So, it came into play, back a couple years ago when the city granted us the funding to aggressively go after blighted properties. And without a stable amount of properties on that blighted property list, we didn't have the inventory to pull from under our ability to take properties by eminent domain through that blighted property list. So it was a
So you can't come up with your own list.
No.
You're waiting as a receiver from code enforcement.
Yeah. In order for the authority to take and file condemnation on our property, it has to be on that blight list. So if it's not on that blight list, now we've got to start that whole process, which can take, code enforcement to go out. And we always say we need some case history, because in the event, a condemnee files preliminary objections against us and takes us to court, we want to have that case to detail to the judge, like, there has been multiple attempts to contact this property owner, who now surfaces when fear of losing his property is put in his lap. So now he's coming 5 years after we sent him the first notice.
That's so it's interesting. Would you say that the percentage of blight in Erie is average, below average, above average? I mean, more than a typical Rust Belt community. I mean, like, how are we doing, like, compared to like Toledo or Canton or something like that?
We're for our size, we're probably about average.
Okay.
Certainly there's the bigger cities in the Rust Belt that take 1,000 properties a year off of.
Do they really?
Oh, Cuyahoga County, City of Cleveland.
Yeah.
They do roughly 1,000 properties a year. I mean, they're.
And what's our number these days?
These days it's around about 30 on average. This year was a low year. We've been trying to clean up some of the properties we took. I believe it was 58 properties last year off the blighted property list and the tax sale through the land bank. So this year's just been more of a finish processing those properties, take a few additional properties, and prepare for 2025.
But meanwhile, time keeps clicking. People keep passing away, and that list doesn't really ever go away, does it?
It doesn't. And we always say we go out to a neighborhood, and in some cases, we're out looking for one property, and we find a blighted property across the street, or a property that should be blighted, something that we'll go back and send an email to code enforcement and start that process of,
so sometimes it's you prompting, sometimes it's a neighbor prompting.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, code enforcement then, themselves will find things. The issue is that we're trying to get above that floor with our property values, right? I mean, isn't blight remediation a key part of just kind of the economy of housing?
Oh, it absolutely is. You look at every blighted property and the percentage. We asked our appraiser kind of what does a blighted property do for the adjoining property owners, and she said, it's probably roughly 7 to 13%, depending upon the neighborhood, of a decrease in value of the properties adjoining, a blighted property or within the same block, because, that deteriorated property has negative impact on that community, and somebody's not going to buy a property next to it because they frankly don't want to live next to it,
Right.
and deal with everything that comes along with a vacant property in a residential neighborhood.
So interesting. All right, we got to take a break here. Aaron is with us from the Redevelopment Authority. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and text it to us at 814-679-1080. You are tuned to Talk Erie. Appreciate you tuning in to Talk Erie at 20 after 4. Aaron Snippert from RedevelopErie, the Erie City Redevelopment Authority, is with us. And Aaron, I want to talk about, again, opportunities. I mean, the reason why we choose to do what we do with blighted properties. And let me just make sure I'm understanding this. You pretty much stick with residential, right? Do you do commercial blight too?
We do handle commercial blight, a little
Okay.
more in the residential neighborhoods, but we do have some commercial blighted structures, anywhere across the city. And we had some vacant industrial parcels we're working on over in connection with the county RDA over in, the west area there in the industrial area on the west side.
Okay. And are those usually I mean, are those usually redeemable types of places, the commercial ones, or is it, it's you never know?
Yeah, no, they are. I mean, they're
Yeah.
really, you look at their properties. We got 2 parcels up at 26th and French right now that were owned by an individual who just sat on them for years and potentially squashed development in that area because of not wanting to sell those. So, that's really, we've started to look at, vacant parcels and other such places that are holding back potential development, whether it be on a commercial corridor or in a residential neighborhood. There's people holding land all over the city of Erie.
Yeah, you do hear these narratives here and there about, he doesn't want to sell, but he's not willing. I shouldn't say he, but the owner is not willing to sell, but doesn't necessarily want to put the money in to what it would take to make it presentable. Right. And then you have these amazing investors like a Pete Zaffris, who's turning 12th Street around, at least in the downtown core, right? And so it takes a lot of money for a private concern to turn a commercial building around, for sure. And same thing for a private.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're just
for residential.
Costly, so
yeah. All right. So, but let's talk about there's some statements of fact that we can make. First off, the city was built for 140,000 people in 1960. We're at 95 on a hopeful day.
Yeah.
1,000 people, and so we're overbuilt. We haven't really had a lot of significant new building since the 70s, I would say, in the city. So I do use the joke of saying we take mid-century modern to its a logical end. What would it take to either rebuild and modernize the housing stock, or get green space or reclaim green space for another day?
Well, certainly, so the Redevelopment Authority and the Land Bank, together combined right now, we probably have approaching 250 lots across the city of Erie.
You guys have lots yourself.
Yeah, we own and manage vacant lots across the city, and we have some decent assemblages of lots across.
You're starting to parcel them together.
Starting to get it together because a standard parcel in the city of Erie isn't necessarily prime for development.
Right.
But 2 parcels next to each other could be prime for an individual to come in and construct a new build. Or there's some parcels in some areas where we have 5, 6 together, where it could be a row of townhouses or such. So we're starting to get those, and assemble them so that they're available for individuals who want to develop and want to do that. But we're still fighting that hurdle of the Erie market versus what the market and the cost to build is, and the amount it would take to subsidize.
Explain it to the people, because I think they need to understand that it costs $300,000 to build a typical single family house, right?
That's it. So we did some cost estimates on some modular and some site built, and you're looking at like $275 to $300 to construct a modest 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single floor ranch home in the city of Erie.
And what would that be? What would the market value of that after it's built be?
On a good day, maybe 180.
So you're out of it.
Yeah, you got a substantial subsidy that would need to come into play to get an individual into a property. So you're not going to see a private developer come into the city of Erie and want to build inside of existing neighborhoods. Sure, if they could find a tract of land and build a neighborhood where the property values would be up, but somebody's just not going to come in on East 22nd Street, buy 2 of our lots and build a single family home. It's just not going to happen unless they're dead set that's where they want to build a house. So that's kind of where we are, and what we've been looking at is what kind of funding and sources and resources we can bring in to help build and complete that funding gap that we have, from the amount that it will cost us to develop a single family property to what we could legitimately sell it to an owner in that neighborhood for.
Where you sit as the executive director of the Redevelopment Authority, would you say that we do have a housing shortage, though? Even with all the things that we're dealing with, where we have population loss, like what's remaining isn't doing the job, is it?
No, we do have a housing shortage. We do know that we could build 30 homes and sell them. It's just a fact of the cost of it would take us to build those and what we could recoup on sale. It just,
Wow.
and it's like, trying to get it's a matter of what kind of sources of grant funds can we provide to a developer to fill that gap. And that's a lot of the things we've been working on for a couple of years now.
Is the federal government, is HUD a partner in this? Is the state government a partner with you guys?
Certainly, they all have funds, and we've,
Okay.
in collaboration with the city, we submitted a grant to HUD for the pro housing grant to help try to bring in $7 million to drive housing development, and so that's still out there. We're still waiting to hear back on that. There's not many awards, and it's a nationwide competitive grant, so it's a long shot, but we got to take those chances and try to bring the funding to Erie, because we do need the development, but our market's not going to right size to that equal level anytime soon.
Okay, so we just have some systemic issues that guys like you have to wrestle with.
Yeah,
It's like a
yeah.
Rubik's Cube.
Oh yeah, and we are so different, and we talk to people, east side of the state versus the west side of the state. Out in Philly, they get $20,000 for a lot. We struggle to get $250 for a lot in the city of Erie.
gosh.
So I mean, it's just we're not the same. And we're just we all have different issues, and it's a matter of what we can do. And going after money from the state, from Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency to bring into the area, but that's $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 at a time. It might get us a couple houses, but and that's what it's going to take, and that's what it's going to take time to get there.
So some folks have suggested that if we could put a couple parcels together, especially in the areas of the lower east and west side where there's no off-street parking, that maybe somebody would go and build a 5-bay garage so that renters could have a place to put their cars and get cars off the street, so that we don't have what happened like last week where you
Right.
can't move a plow down the street.
Yeah, and that's always when we look at these blighted properties and we look at acquiring them, and so there's a lot that goes into, a lot of times there's the negative stigma that we just go in and we tear down properties, but there's a lot that goes into the evaluation of those properties, and a lot of times you're looking at a property, it's a single family home, it's got no off-street parking, renovations looking at about $150,000 just to make it habitable, the foundation structurally unsound. That lot's probably better given or sold to an adjoining property owner for off-street parking.
Wow.
Because we know it's needed. That one lot could be off-street parking for 2 houses. So it's more of a benefit there than it is for us to look at finding somebody who would put that kind of money into a single-family property.
I've got less than a minute, and we're going to take the bottom of the hour break. Aaron Snippert is with us here from RedevelopErie. When we come back, I want to talk about what could happen to make a neighborhood hot, like the whole concept of gentrification. And again, that's a bad word, but if you read the Buki plan, you would understand that finding the floor for our housing values leads itself to people wanting to start investing money into the city, and that's where we want to get. We want our tax base to grow and to have a good, safe, and affordable housing available for people. I hope that you stay with us here. It's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show on a Tuesday afternoon. Stay with us. We're talking what could be with housing in Erie, Pennsylvania, and some of the opportunities. Aaron Snippert is our guest. He is the executive director of the RedevelopErie, the Erie City Redevelopment Authority. Somebody says, what happens when it's just a bad neighbor that doesn't like the other neighbor calling on him? Sometimes there is that going on, right? Yeah. I mean, you really have to have a legitimate complaint, but as property owners, we can do our part to make sure that our gutter is not falling over or our grass gets too long or whatever.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think when it comes down to code enforcement, any complaint is potentially a good complaint and an issue because as code enforcement officers, the ability to go out there, engage with that property owner, identify their financial situation, and maybe connect them with the resources they need to fix their home, that maybe they're not doing, So if it's two neighbors fighting, of course that happens. We know that. But,
sure.
But really, we want residents to call if they know there's a vacant property. All too often, we'll go out to a neighborhood and put a posting on the door, and a neighbor will come out and say, it's about time. I've been mowing that lawn for 5 years. And we're like, well, we just found out about it last month. Like,
make a call.
Yeah, make a call. Let us know. I mean, if you live next to a blighted property, we want to know about it. We want code enforcement to be able to do their due diligence and get it on the blighted property list.
All right. We've had the neighborhoods come in and tell their story. Our West Bayfront, East Side, the Bayfront East Side Task Force. I mean, those places and their views and their walkability, their access to places like Hammett and Gannon and Erie Insurance, they have potential to really be hot neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Lend your expertise to how that could work, Aaron. I mean, and what would be a role of the Redevelopment Authority to do that? Right.
Yeah. Certainly, we get that a lot of those questions and concerns about what we're doing and taking properties and pushing out property owners. But we always take vacant properties. What we do, but we're creating opportunity for development. And those neighborhood groups that you mentioned, they want to develop. They want to develop rental housing. They want to develop single family properties, whether it's renovation or new construction. And really, we always look at everybody deserves a safe, quality place to live, whether it be a rental property or a home, that's energy efficient, low on bills. We see all too often, properties that just are energy sucking, properties because they're just not efficient. So we get rid of the blighted properties, which in turn raise the property values and create generational wealth for the individuals who own those properties, and that's something that is always a concern that, is there generational wealth and property values go up to people who live there, and unfortunately sometimes, yes, it makes it harder for an individual who maybe grew up in that neighborhood to buy a house, but where the Redevelopment Authority comes in is working to identify funding sources to help subsidize those property sales. And there's funding out there for it. And as I had mentioned before, we go after those funding sources and those grants to bring that property down to an affordable level. We've been working for I think over 2 years now with some of the neighborhood groups, the executive directors and such, working on creating a community land trust in the city of Erie.
Okay, what is that?
So a community land trust works with partners to develop properties and hold housing. The land trust holds a 99-year lease on the land, but sells the structure to an individual. So that there's a stewardship opportunity there, but they're sold at an affordable rate. And with that, they're able to get some wealth out of that property the longer they're there. Not as much as, let's say, they move into it, the property subsidized at $100,000. They're there for 10 years. Rest of the properties go up 200% in value. They're not able to recoup all of that increase in value. They're held to a certain percentage of that increase because the goal is that if they move out to move up to a better house, that property is then sold at to another individual who needs the assistance.
Would be able to afford it.
It's kind of that move up, that steps somebody out of rental housing into home ownership that may not quite be ready for standalone home ownership, without a lack of a better, where community land trusts are built on a stewardship model where there's an individual who helps somebody they're the person they call when, hey, my water heater stopped working. Who do I call? You call a plumber. Here's a couple people to call. Like how do I maintain my furnace? Things like that. So there's land trust work to get people into properties at an affordable rate, but also teach them and be there to guide them through. And so,
have we had a pilot program yet of this?
We have not. We're
Okay.
just the board seated at the current time with the initial board. We've been working with a program manager who's been great with helping us navigate all it takes to get everything up and running. The bylaws created, all of the legal documents created. So she's been fantastic with helping us with that. So we're getting to that point where we've now identified, I think it's 7 properties to put an initial grant from FAIR into some properties to help with the development and get some rehabilitation going. So we're taking that next step as we're getting to go. So hopefully here in the next year or so, we'll have some properties coming online there. So to that point, we're trying to do everything we can to keep some properties in neighborhoods affordable, while also allowing other properties to increase in value and create that wealth for the people who live there.
Talk about the young families. I feel like the flight to the suburbs has been kind of turned around, and it's pretty cool for a millennial to purchase a home in one of these neighborhoods and find a fixer-upper, right? We watch all the HD TV till we're blue in the face, and they attempt to kind of rebound, and you start getting a few of those millennial families moving back into town. You could start building some critical mass, and again, the idea of turning a neighborhood around, that seemed to be the vibe that I'm hearing from the neighborhood groups is, having critical mass, keeping development consolidated, and then expanding. Let's say whether it's from on the west side from Gridley Park on out, right? Let's work on the park properties and then move our way out as we kind of bring Erie into the 21st century in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
Is that a pretty valid strategy? And again, what kinds of things do you guys can help with
Yeah.
that?
So we over the years we've tried different models, and so we started blight mitigation on a scattered site, but we also started to realize we need to do concentrated efforts. We focused on some Main Street corridors, focused on some properties in some very consolidated areas, and what that showed was that we went into a neighborhood. There's one area, 4th and Poplar. A few years back, we went in, we tore down, I believe it was 5 properties within really that 4-block area around that 4th and Poplar, and the private investment comes back. People start fixing up their homes and start to see that.
So you could see the equation working.
You can. Really, if we could go back and look at that area back in early 2017 and go out there now, there's just been that investment back into the neighborhood. People fix their properties up because you imagine living next to a rundown, vagrant, filled property with drug use. You're not going to invest in your property. Why are you going to put new siding on when you're living next to a property that should be torn down? And so we've seen that, and we've tried to work at strategically going after that, but working on building off of what are the assets in a neighborhood.
What would it take to accelerate this blight mitigation? Again, you talked about 30 homes this year, 50 the previous year, but there's a lot to do. Basically, to get to 1,000 homes, we're talking over 10 years to do that.
Yeah, and it comes down to funding.
Okay.
We're fortunate with the Erie Land Bank and some gaming revenue funds that come into the Erie County Land Bank that we work with and leverage off of, to bring in approximately $650,000 a year for blight mitigation in the city of Erie, and that's been a tremendous asset since 2017 with the creation of the Erie Land Bank and that funding, and of course the 1.8 we got from the city to the redevelopment authority out of the ARPA funds to go after blight mitigation. So you're looking at we could spend $600 to $1 million a year for easily the next 20 years and still probably not hit every blighted property in the city of Erie.
Sure. Talk about the use of data. Been a lot of chatting about GIS during this storm, knowing where where the cars are that were blocking the streets, knowing where the hydrants are. How do you guys use geographic data?
Yeah, so it's been great. The city's kind of invested in a GIS administrator who's been putting together some stuff, helping code enforcement officers kind of track some blighted properties, keep aware of that. And so it's been good. It helps us get that visual look at where blighted properties exist and start to identify, like I said, those consolidated areas where maybe we should look to aggressively go after some blight because it's getting bad. We also use it to look at, we want to look at kind of, in Erie focused, said to watch the tipping point neighborhoods, that 26th Street corridor. And so we've, with the land bank, been kind of over the last couple of years focused on looking at those properties south of 26th Street and mitigating the blight heavily in those neighborhoods while it's still a one-off and be able to take care of that now before it becomes 2-3 per block like it is in some of the other neighborhoods. So, we've used that data to try to identify it and be like, ooh, there's a hot spot in that area. Maybe we should get in there, do some intervention, and go after it that way.
I love how you use hot spot. It's almost like fighting a fire.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is really, we always call it a cancer. Blighted properties are a cancer on a neighborhood.
It's interesting. I live in the Fifth Ward in the Upper East Side in the Mercier's neighborhood, and again, there's just a couple around, but I noticed that whoever either recently purchased or got a clue, they're really starting to work, and they got the dumpster in, and they started pulling out the junk, and you see how quickly you can turn a property around.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't take long. It's just costly. I mean, our condemnation process it costs us almost $8,000 to $9,000 in legal fees to acquire a property. Wow. Then if we're going to offer it out for rehabilitation, it's another $5,000 to $6,000 to clean out the contents because these houses aren't empty. The people didn't take their stuff when they left. A lot of times people put stuff in there in the time in which it's vacant. So we've got to empty that out. That costs money. I mean, demolition is running about $7,200 a property right now, which is compared to some other areas is affordable, but it's still a cost. And so when we look at even to demolish a property, we're almost $20,000 into a lot we're going to sell for $500. So it's all a cost, but it's something, and we see it now. You talk to those properties; those were probably upset tax sale property acquisitions.
Okay.
They were sold at the upset tax sale. We got the judicial tax sale coming up. That was postponed until next week. Another group of properties in the city of Erie that are tax delinquent that, the Erie Land Bank is going to option 20 and other individuals will buy them. And so, those properties will come back online and hopefully be rehabilitated and taken care of.
If someone, wants to buy an adjacent or, a property down the street that comes up on sale, what's a way to do all that?
Right.
What do you have to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have vacant lot proposal forms for any of our vacant lots through the, RedevelopErie.org or the ErieLandBank.org are our two websites. And you can go on there and the property lists are on there, help you try to identify a property that's next to you. A lot of times there are properties on the repository list that are vacant lots next to somebody.
So that's what they talk about at City Hall. Is there any repository sales?
Yes, at the council. Yeah. So those are different through the Tax Claim Bureau.
Okay.
You can pick those up for $250 as well.
Unreal.
So, it's just there's different ways. It's all properties that for one way or another were vacant at some point.
But you're responsible for the taxes after you pick them up.
Yes. Yeah, which on a vacant lot in the city of Erie, $200 a year. City,
really? Okay.
County school. It's not a lot, so it's really worth it, really, because you can't build unless you connect it with your property. You can't build a structure on it, but you can put a driveway in, a play area for children, whatever the case would be. So we get proposals all the time with different things people want to do with them. So
a buddy of mine about 5 years ago, the house was falling down on itself next door to him, and I think maybe the city tore it down, and he was able to acquire the lot, and he has this beautiful big
nice
area, that his kid's learning to play baseball in. Again, it's just amazing. Let's talk about the economic impact that this could make if we can get on the upside of this blight. It really could mean property values continue to grow, and that your investments would start matching up with, the value would match up with your investments.
Yeah, that's really our ultimate goal is to improve the neighborhoods and make the neighborhoods welcoming, vibrant, and sustainable again. We want everybody, any neighborhood in the city of Erie to be that way. But, we want the neighborhoods to be what people would want. We're not going to attract businesses to the city of Erie if their residents can't live in stable neighborhoods. And you think about, you come into the city of Erie from the east side on East 6th Street, and you drive past blighted properties on East 6th Street. And we have a burned out one right now that we're have out for demo bid that'll come down, and we'll take care of that one. But there's other ones, and so those neighborhoods just have a negative impact on people's perception of the city of Erie, and that's what we're fighting for. And we're fighting to take care of those, and ultimately in the end, hopefully increase property values and attract further development to the area. But working on those tools to keep it sustainable and fight that gentrification term.
Yeah. Well, again, making the whole sense of place attractive, so that our kids want to stay here, that they could find a house, have a nice, because the quality of life is here, Aaron. Mm-hmm. It's making sure that that we mitigate as many negatives as we can, right?
That's it. That's yeah. Yep, absolutely.
I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
Aaron Snippert, the RedevelopErie Executive Director. What's your website?
RedevelopErie.org.
Beautiful. Thanks so much. It is 4:50 here on Talk Erie.